Hello and welcome, everybody. We are back today after quite a long time to a return on the A New Leviathan YouTube channel and other platforms of video series. And today, as we go into this year of 2025 and we analyze the return of Donald Trump to the presidency, which previously most of my videos were made under the era of Joe Biden as president, which, as you know, I was not a big fan of his policies, most of them. But today I want to talk about an issue that has pretty much plagued the nation since the beginning of America and really has been a political issue for all of history and other nations. And that is the issue of spending and tax policies under President Donald Trump. And namely, first I'm going to mention that the main way in which he has made his mark on spending, on government spending, has been through his platform and through his policies on the Department of Government Efficiency, which is, of course, as you know, headed by Elon Musk. Was until recently when Musk decided to return to his company, Tesla. And it is the main way in which Trump has put his footprint out there in terms of spending. And today I'm just going to talk about really why I think that the Department of Government Efficiency is truly a genius move on the hands of Trump, and I think it's really a beneficial thing for the United States and for the government. And I'm actually going to talk about how Trump's newest action, that is his promotion and the House's successful passing, thank goodness, of what is known as, and this is a very Trumpian name, the Big Beautiful Bill. Really sounds like a name Trump himself came up with. It's sort of the type of grammar that he often uses in his speeches. And this Big Beautiful Bill is going to mostly make changes to tax policies in the United States. It's essentially Trump's second term's version of what under his first term was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. And I'm going to talk about how I think the policies of that bill work in tandem with what the Department of Government Efficiency has already established and has already accomplished in terms of and in nature of government spending, and then how that can relate to the tax policies of the United States of America. So firstly, it's no secret that DOGE has really put a huge axe to government spending, and in particular, it is notable for going after government spending that is particularly wasteful in that it is spent on increasingly absurd things that often, interestingly enough, kind of go over from economic to social policy. We're talking about lots of things to promote agendas like LGBT or the Democrats' version of racial equality, which is more than standard racial equality. It's the type of Black Lives Matter equality and things like that, where you don't just have racial equality now, you have things that are actually racially unequal, such as, for example, bolstering certain students of certain races' admittance into college, or taking race into account when it comes to promotions in the United States military for who gets to be an officer, who gets to be of higher rank. Such things that they claim bring racial justice, even when they are quite literally racial discrimination, except with different races than the kind that we used to see about 100 years ago in this country. But regardless of those social issues, which really you could make an entire whole video about, most of the policies they've gone after are things that are linked to these, because it is these spending projects that are the most outlandish. It is these spending projects where it's very clear that the only purpose of some of the things that this government has been funding, that the government had been funding under Joe Biden, was to promote Joe Biden's social agenda on these issues, various things that we would term woke or DEI, especially when it comes to these things being promoted in other countries than the United States. It's ridiculous enough, for example, that the Biden administration literally ran a program to attempt to, and spending, again, these things cost millions of dollars of taxpayer money, sometimes even into the billions. Projects, for example, such as attempting to do transgender operations on animals in a way that they said somehow would bring some more knowledge to do such things on human beings, such things like that are spent, that the Biden administration was using taxpayer money for, millions and billions of dollars worth. And sometimes these things were not done even in the United States. They were to promote these agendas overseas as kind of a globalist idea that the United States not only has a duty to protect other countries in things like war and such. That's an older idea, and that I think is somewhat reasonable. We do have some role to play in global affairs as a major nation, and there are definitely ways that our country can make a positive impact on other countries. But spending millions of taxpayer dollars on DEI initiatives in other countries, especially, for example, there were many that were done in third world or very underdeveloped countries, which makes no sense whatsoever, because the focus there should be on reaching basic necessities, not promoting agendas. All of those have been the target of Doge, and I think that is really good, and that is really indicative. They have both gone after just kind of generalized common government corruption in officials and waste and inefficiency, but more specifically, they have targeted things that are clearly only there to serve an agenda, and therefore are very wasteful spending. And frankly, even if you agree that such an initiative would be good or not, regardless of your opinion on the LGBT or the racial justice ideas or the woke or all of that, there's a certain amount of people that I think you just have to agree that even if you agree with those ideas, it is a huge waste to be spending such massive amounts of money, taxpayer money, from the government that could either be spent on something better, something more productive for the United States, such as increasing our security, which is something that Donald Trump has definitely done a ton for, or better yet, and this is what I'm talking about with the tax cuts, better yet, could not be spent by the government at all and is instead allowed to stay in the hands of the American people to their economic benefit, instead of seeing their money dissipate and then go to fund these ridiculous $1 million pride parades in the capital of Azerbaijan and such things. That's just an example, but such things. And really, the really sick thing is that before Doge came along, the Biden administration was fully aware of what they were doing. They were fully aware. Some of them legitimately thought that these millions of dollars in woke DEI initiatives some of them legitimately believed that was a good use of government spending. But not only that, they knew in some cases that they were literally throwing money away, but they did it anyways. For example, we have the now infamous quote that is in relation to Biden administration officials trying to basically spend as much money as they could in the budget before Trump came into office. I mean, it's essentially like the criminal trying to spend as much of his stolen money as he can before the police shows up, almost. It had that sort of feeling. And that they were talking about the fact that they felt like, under the Biden administration, they were literally throwing gold bars off the Titanic. That's the metaphor they used to describe it. They intentionally talked about wanting to spend as much money as possible in the federal budget for these initiatives, because they knew when Trump came into office, he had promised to take an axe to all of this ridiculous and wasteful spending and all of these unfair things that take from the American taxpayer, spend it on things that will, without a doubt, never benefit them, the vast majority of people. And the vast majority of people in the United States probably are morally opposed to paying for. It's truly ridiculous that these things were allowed to go on for so long. But I'm very glad that Doge has absolutely taken an axe to all of these things and has tried to eliminate as much spending as possible. I remember seeing a while back a video that I thought was frankly quite ridiculous, where a leftist opponent of the Department of Government Efficiency and its policies and such was complaining about it. And they mentioned one of their complaints was that they mentioned that Trump had initially promised, he said, that Doge could eliminate $2 trillion from the national debt, from the national budget, would eliminate $2 trillion of wasteful spending from the budget, not from the debt, from the budget. Corrected. And then they talked about how Trump later lowered that to saving $1 trillion from the budget, and that currently they've only saved $160 billion from the budget. And frankly, I just thought that was absolutely ridiculous. It really is quite baffling, I think, just to think about the level of money that is spent at the federal level. And this is something that everybody in America should really be thinking about, should really be looking at. That we have certain people in our government who complain and say that Donald Trump promised us that he could save us $2 trillion off of wasteful spending off of our budget. And now he says it's only $1 trillion. And they've actually only saved $160 billion. Well, frankly, in my opinion, I think any amount of money that can be saved that is wasteful, unnecessary spending that can either be better spent by the government or not spent by the government, given back to the people, is a phenomenal amount. And I think $160 billion worth of savings is certainly not something to complain about. And I think that really it's ironic that the same people who complain that say that Doge has only saved a portion of the money that they have pledged to spend are also the same ones who are constantly launching lawsuits against the government. That is, well, they're either supporters of or are the Democrat politicians themselves who are constantly launching lawsuits against Trump and the government and constantly complaining and constantly trying to block him from eliminating more wasteful spending from the very kind of programs that they usually support, or just in general rooting out corruption and unwanted and unneeded spending in the government, reducing the size of the government. And really, then we get to just kind of another topic, and that is, well, sort of on the same topic, but another thing that has come up is that besides the wasteful and unnecessary spending that is primarily linked to ideological things like DEI or things that are just straight up wasteful, we then get to the argument about the United States government's role to play in spending on certain projects at all. For example, the two biggest departments in the two biggest, well, not necessarily departments, but two biggest areas of government where Doge has removed spending from are the U.S. Aid and International Development and the Department of Defense. Those are the major things that they have eliminated spending in. And in particular, U.S. Aid has been perhaps the biggest focus of Doge, and perhaps the thing that has attracted the most talk about are the cuts in this area, because the U.S. aid program has pretty much been shut down in its entirety by Trump and Musk in the Doge program. And the U.S. Aid and International Development is perhaps the most globalist program in the entire government because it is entirely devoted to giving money to projects in other countries. Now, U.S. aid was a hotbed of corruption. It was absolutely horrible. Most of these crazy DEI projects that you're going to hear about, it could take a day to list them all. The promotion of these ridiculous, completely ideological projects overseas in other countries. We're talking the rapper in Gaza who got funded by the U.S. government to make some kind of music that had an ideological message related to the Israel-Gaza war. It's, completely ridiculous stuff. Kanye West Bank and such. Completely ridiculous stuff. Most of it was happening under U.S. aid. And in particular, this got a lot of controversy because, it's pretty bad if you're spending taxpayer money, millions of billions of dollars on ridiculous ideological things like pride celebrations and such that, that doesn't benefit the general American taxpayer very much. That doesn't provide a real benefit to people's lives, like creating more security in the country, upgrading our national defense does. But not only that, the fact that they weren't even being spent on that group in America, but instead overseas attracted the most controversy, was perhaps the most out of touch, type of spending they could possibly do that did not affect the life of the American taxpayer in any positive way, and instead just sucked money away from them. Now, some people have gotten very controversial about Trump's pretty much elimination of most of the program as a whole. And many people say, the ideological spending is one thing, but doesn't U.S. aid produce some kind of positive impact on the world as a whole and improve the U.S.'s reputation? But my counterpoint to this that I think is very important, and I think that is something that Trump has really touched about, that most Republican or Democrat politicians had not really talked about previous to this. And this is kind of in the way that Trump has been associated with the populist and more nationalist right, and less with a globalist right during his entire career in politics, pretty much since when he first ran in 2016. You could say it even goes back to when he ran in 2000 under the Reform Party. He had many of the same ideas regarding a very isolationist and nativist focus on America. And that is that I believe that while U.S. aid has a noble purpose, and while it would seemingly be a noble idea, I think that in general its original purpose and its original message and such has gotten pretty much completely corrupted by the spending inefficiencies and by the corruption in it that was brought on by the Biden era. And I think it ultimately highlights a problem of the program as a whole, which is that it is always a bit sketchy and it is always a bit questionable when the US government, or any government for that matter, spends millions and billions of dollars, sometimes trillions, spends a really large chunk of money on people that they do not actually govern. That is, they do not spend it on the very people who have a stake in that country itself, the very people who would have voted or not voted that leader into office. And I think that that is really what is important when it comes to, and I think that is really important, what is important when it comes to Trump's position on the U.S. aid program and his position on global aid as a whole. Even without the U.S. government doing things, the United States is already the origin of most charitable and philanthropic private charities in the world. It is the origin, the founding of most of those organizations. I don't know if I've talked about this before, but it's something that's really interesting, is that many leftists like to talk about the fact that compared to most advanced democracies, the United States lacks a government-funded healthcare system, and that our government-funded programs for most social needs are much less advanced, much less developed, have much less money given toward them, do much less things than such programs in other countries in Europe or in the European Union or, for example, Canada. But my counterpoint to this, and I don't know if I've brought this up before, is that the United States, as a response to that, as a reaction to that, has the most developed, the most funded, the most given to, and the most generous public when it comes to charities and philanthropic organizations of any advanced first world country in the world. Obviously, a lot of charity does go to the kind of places that U.S. aid is usually donating to. So I think that there is already many who voluntarily help out the third world, and most of them come from the United States, and the United States is known for, in response to us having a more free market, less government orientated, less government industry controlled economy than most of Europe and Canada and some other first world countries, already has that charity and philanthropic system in place, really is going to already benefit those countries, while USAID primarily, again, has this problem in that it is an overly globalist spending program, in that it spends money that is given by the US people and does not reinvest it into the US people. It gives it to people abroad who did not actually contribute said taxpayer money. Again, when Donald Trump took office, He took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the U.S. Constitution, and the U.S. Constitution is for the protection, the preservation, and the defense of the U.S. people and the United States, not for the preservation, the protection, and the defense of other countries. For this reason, I think that what Trump is doing is going to be a net positive for the United States, and therefore, in that role, I think he is making a correct decision in that by eliminating this waste and focusing primarily on the American homeland, he is most fulfilling the role that the U.S. president should play in benefiting our people and bringing us into a new golden age. This is where Trump's big, beautiful bill comes in, and this is very much linked to Doge. I think this is something that many people need to bring up. I think even Trump himself could talk about it more. Now, the big, beautiful bill makes sweeping tax cuts across the board. It's similar to what Trump did during his first terms with Tax Cuts and Jobs 2017 Act. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act 2017, which, as its name suggests, is meant to benefit the economy by eliminating taxes. And I could go into a much more in-depth analysis of why I think generally that the Republicans and the right wing of America have the correct position on that lowering income taxes at the federal level and lowering property and sales tax at the state and the local level generally has a benefit on the American people and the American economy. But I think that what is really important is how it works in tandem with Doge. Many say and bring up with that, obviously, cutting taxes could potentially increase the U.S. deficit because, of course, the government will not have as much money to spend. And in my opinion, good. It's a good thing that the U.S. government does not have as much money to spend, because when the U.S. government gets more money to spend, as we saw under Joe Biden, it is a potential for abuse. Most of the time, when the U.S. government gets a hand of our taxpayer money, they are not so good about making sure that it's spent well. They don't watch their allowance and make sure they stay on budget. That's a given. Our government's notorious for that. The deficit and the debt are pretty much an ever-growing problem. And for this reason, I think that it is actually a good thing, and it will be a good lesson in spending that Trump first eliminates this billions of dollars, $160 billion so far, at least. Could be more. I mean, we've at least until 2029 under Trump's term, and perhaps more if Vance or another Republican successor wins a term after Trump, to eliminate more of this wasteful spending and keep this Department of Government efficiency going over and over again. And I think that first, Trump has eliminated the wasteful spending, and now he has made it possible, now that much of this wasteful spending is gone, he has made it possible to, in the place of that, reduce taxes and eliminate the amount of money the government has, because now the government will need to spend less on those ridiculous policies, on those ridiculous, wasteful things that the Joe Biden administration had promoted that were both a result of leftist view on economics, on the government having a overly inflated and overly bloated budget on spending on all sorts of social needs, and their view on social issues, that is using this economic policy of government intervention in the economy to advance their social issues. Trump has, like I said, I think really made the correct decision in this regard, because as we've seen under previous administrations that have followed this laissez-faire, this legacy of this laissez-faire, you can call it laissez-faire, trickle-down economics, this platform and this policy has had many successes in the United States. It has had many successes and benefits for the United States people. Back in the 1920s, perhaps the progenitor of this idea, Calvin Coolidge, the Republican, had very laissez-faire economics. He reduced taxes significantly, reduced the income tax, reduced taxes on many goods that were popular at the time, like the automobile and such. And then what did we get? We got the Roaring '20s that are now famous, that are now so famous, and are known by that name because it was a time of great economic success for the United States as a whole. It was a time of many new inventions and many new technologies being more accessible to the people because they did not have these arbitrary and unnecessary taxes on them. Ronald Reagan, a man who I've talked about before, during the 1980s, another time of great economic success in the United States. Reduced unemployment and inflation simultaneously with a greatly growing GDP that lasted for the longest period straight since World War II. Under Donald Trump's first term, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdowns and such that were associated with that, we had from 2017 to 2019 a quite successful economy during Trump's first term. And I think that this act could without a doubt be a benefit to Trump and without a doubt a benefit to the country as a whole. Not only is Trump securing a campaign promise by pushing for the passage of the big beautiful bill, which, as I said just a few days ago, passed the House. That's why I'm talking about it. It's the biggest win for Trump that's happened recently. The big beautiful bill is going to continue what Trump has started with Doge, and that is a policy of reducing waste and inefficiency in the government, and in its place, being able to allow Americans to benefit by saying that they may keep more of the money that they have earned from their own salaries instead of having it go to U.S. aid to be spent on some ridiculous initiative in a far-off land. And I think that is really a crux of what Donald Trump has been talking about for his entire political career since he first ran in 2016. That is America first. And I think that that is something that Trump could really tap into. And that's really a focus of, I think, both Doge and the big beautiful bill, is that by eliminating this wasteful and unnecessary spending that, even if it was spent in America, does not actually benefit America, does not actually prioritize the whole of America first. It prioritizes certain groups and certain interests first. I think that by Trump passing this big beautiful bill, hopefully this truly beautiful bill will pass through the Senate as well, Trump does have an opportunity to truly benefit the people in a way that Joe Biden never did, by allowing us to keep more of our own money, by incentivizing corporations to expand, incentivizing foreign corporations to come here and invest in America, incentivizing corporations to pay their employees more, increasing average wages, decreasing unemployment, again, by this expansion of business, making it easier to do business in the United States, decreased inflation due to increased productivity. All of these things have been shown and have happened previously under Coolidge in the 20s, under Reagan in the 80s, and hopefully under Trump in the 2020s. And that will be my final statement on this matter. So thank you for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you.